Buffalo, stand up. It's the mafia. It's a Bill City. Yeah, a Buffalo Bill City. Yo, it's a Bill City. Yeah, a Buffalo Bill City. Yo, we got Josh Allen, got Step Diggs, we got Cole. Hawkins, cause you know it's about to snow. Mafia, you know we on a roll. No competition and it's not even close.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into a brand new edition of the Folding Roundtable, the Bills podcast from Trainwreck Sports and the Buffalo FAMBase, with a new lineup every single week. Tonight, some familiar faces from last week, and also two new members of the roundtable. So before we get into Bills Packers, the 53-man roster, Josh Allen for this year, and loads more of Bills stuff, let me introduce everyone that we have here tonight. So obviously, top middle right there, my partner in crime from the Crowd Assist podcast. We've actually been doing it this is our second season. It's just past our 1-year anniversary of working together. Kevin Massare, right to his right. Robyn, Mundy, editor-in-chief of the Buffalo FAMBase and the godmother of Bills Mafia, bottom left. Muki Hawkins was just on the radio with him on 96.5 Power FM and last night, and it was a blast. Excited to talk with him again tonight. Ryan Talbot down in the middle, half of the duo from New York Upstate, and then, of course, bottom right, generally likable guy, cap genius, Greg Tompsett from Cover One. And obviously, there's a lot of things going on this week, like, roster cuts and everything going on after the preseason game. So Greg was kind of the go-to guy for me when I'm looking at cap stuff and, roster construction. He's a whiz with this. So he was just a natural guy to bring in here. But before we get into all of this, let's start talking about Josh Allen. Let's start on a positive note. A lot of negativity in the Bills media sphere right now, but let's talk about something everyone loves talking about, and that's Josh Allen. Specifically, Nick Wright loves talking about Josh Allen. He doesn't know what he's saying sometimes, but you know what? As Bills Mafia, it's our duty to debunk some of his laziest and just baseless takes, and he had one a few days ago that we're going to play right now for you guys.
Oof. Well, bargain's going to be tough. It's arguably the best contract from a player's perspective ever given out in NFL history. Sure. Some would say Mahomes is better, but I think this is maybe the most player-friendly, best contract ever. So it's tough to make that a bargain. And I don't want to say I'm predicting it will be a bust, but I think it's far more likely to become an albatross than it is, oh my God, good thing we signed him early because he would have been worth $60 million a year. And that's not because Josh Allen wasn't excellent last year. He was excellent last year. It's because last year was literally the only excellent year, not of his NFL career, of his football career. Josh Allen was not a great high school player. It's why he had no Division I offers. He was not a great junior college player. He was less than 50% completions. He was not a great college player. The best he ever did was second team Mountain West. He was a bad rookie and a mediocre second-year player.
A bad rookie and a mediocre second-year player. Greg, as my resident capologist here tonight on the Folding Roundtable, is there any reason to worry about Josh Allen's contract? Because I know some people maybe think that we paid him just a little bit too much. Are you worried whatsoever about that?
So there's two different ways to look at that. Am I worried? No. I feel confident that that's the going rate for a franchise quarterback, and that's simply what it costs. Is there any reason to worry? Sure. We just committed $258 million to a person. If something happens or he goes wrong, yeah, we're sunk. It's going to be a disaster. I don't think that's going to happen. He was second in the MVP. He's shown a linear amount of improvement. Every year, the reason that he gets better is because he's shown an incredible amount of coachability, willingness to, strip his mechanics down to the studs and rebuild them. He works so hard with Jordan Palmer. He's built the relationships with Shea Tierney, with Ken Dorsey, with Brian Daboll. I think there's a lot of reasons to believe that he's going to be incredibly sustainable, and that even if it's not quite as amazing as last year, it's not coming back down far. He could exceed last year. He could do just as well as last year. And if he doesn't, it's going to be right there. They've surrounded him with too much talent and too many people around him. But anytime you ask anyone what's going to happen 8 years from now is crazy to think. Yeah, of course there's risk involved when you commit to someone. We're committed to pay him $51 million 7 years from now. That's a ton of money. I hope that by that time, because of the TV contracts, because of the contracts that Trey Lance and Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow and Spencer Rattler and guys who haven't even been drafted yet, maybe they're getting paid $60 million by that time, and Josh Allen is a huge discount, and that we're super excited that we have him at that cost. So I'm not nervous. I think it was smart to lock him up for that long. I think there's going to come a point 3-4 years into this deal where it's going to become a discount because of how much other people got paid.
Yep.
But anyone saying that there's no risk in committing 8 years out to somebody is probably being wishful. Of course there's risk.
Of course there's risk, but the buzzword right now is regression. Allen regression, and a lot of people think that regression just means getting worse, when in reality it means going closer to average. Ryan, if there is any amount of Allen regression this year, do we even have a baseline to kind of measure that with? Because he's had 3 seasons who have been completely different, mainly because of his dedication to fixing his mechanics and everything.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a baseline for that necessarily, but listen, could he throw more interceptions this year than he did 1 year ago? Absolutely. How many batted balls just landed innocently on the turf or were dropped by defenders? That happens to every quarterback. So year by year, interception rates are going to differ. His completion percentage might not be hovering near 70%, but I still think it's going to be in the mid 60s at worst. So he could see some slight drops here and there just because of the ascension that he made from year 2 to year 3. But to Greg's point, look at the talent that's around him. You're talking Stephon Diggs, Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley, Gabriel Davis, Isaiah McKenzie, and that's just your top 5, and there's still talent behind those guys. You have a solid offensive line that you've pretty much had in place. Obviously, there's still going to be some guard differences this year because Cody Ford looks like he's in line to start. He's had some injuries, but the majority of that line's been together too. So there's also that cohesiveness with them, the coaching staff, Brian Dable first and foremost, and then the people that he's worked with, not only on this coaching staff, but also in the offseason, year in, year out. He's always working to improve his game.
Yeah, that's one thing that you can always say about him is that he's got a work ethic like almost no other, and he's always looking to improve. Muki, you and I talked about this a little bit last night, and how he is in the top 10 in the NFL top 100 right now. You and I are in the same camp that he should be in that 6 to 8 range, at the very worst, really, because of how well he played. But specifically talking about 2021, what are your personal expectations for Josh Allen? Do you expect him to stay pat with his baseline, or will you accept some wiggle room in maybe the direction he'd be a little disappointed with?
Well, let me just start off with this. Why are we waiting for a Josh Allen letdown that has not happened yet? I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure out why everybody is trying to listen. Nick Wright has to lie to kick it. All right, now if he has a platform, and I get that. A lot of people have platforms where they can say and to them it's gold. But let's talk realistic. Let's go back to the clip that you just played, right? Yeah. They're still waiting on the down. Why are people worried about Josh Allen? Josh Allen wasn't the number 1 overall pick in that year's draft. You need to be talking about that quarterback if he's a bust at this point. The Buffalo Bills paid $258 million. All right? They're not paying $258 million for a bust. So why are we still saying that Josh Allen is a bust? I thought they were saying that last year with Josh. That's why the Bills brass went out and got a Stephon Diggs, because they need to know year 3, is this guy our franchise guy or is he a bust? So $258 million just answered that question. The bust factor is over with. You should be having that debate with Baker Mayfield at this point. All right. So in another thing, he wants to run down Josh's storyline. Oh, he went here. He went there. He didn't have these many offers. Let me ask you one question. How many offers did Tom Brady have coming out of college? And I'm going to wait. All right? What did Tom Brady get drafted in? And I'm going to wait. So all that stuff that Nick Wright be going on and talking about that everybody loved, like that's some storyline. Let's talk realistic, please. All right? Let's be realistic. Josh Allen is going to throw for 5,000 yards this year. That's realistic. All right, that's realistic. Josh Allen, those are my expectations because I want to see improvement each year. Why are we trying to pray or hope for a downfall and make an excuse for it right now? That's not happening. Are y'all witnessing what Josh Allen is doing in training camp? Are y'all listening to what Emmanuel Sanders said about Josh Allen? Come on, man. We got to stop nicknaming this, man. You know what I mean? Is it hate or what's going on? You know what I mean? Josh Allen has done nothing but defied all the doubters. And they still look, just like my man Fabulous says, when the hate don't work, they start telling lies, man. Come on, man. Why are we talking about this right now? Josh Allen is way beyond the bust factor. Josh Allen is right now is an elite quarterback status right now. Josh Allen has made the biggest jump from the NFL top 100 in history. So why are we talking about is he a bust? Where's Baker Mayfield at on that chart right now? You know, where? You know, he went before Josh Rosen. But at the end of the day, people still was feeling that Josh Rosen was better than Josh Allen. You know what I mean? So let's I don't want to hear no more about Josh Allen being a buzz. If he has a letdown, then Josh Allen, this is worst on critic. He know how to get out of it. You know, I'm just tired of that narrative.
Yeah.
Let's talk expectations. Let's talk about doing something that real elite quarterbacks do. An elite club like 5,000. He's going to throw for over 5,000 yards this year. Now, his interceptions may be the same just because he still has that, hey, he's that gunslinger mentality. You know what I mean? He's going to try to force some things in there. And if you see what he's been doing in practice, he's been doing just that. And guess what? What he's been working on that, you know, that people stopped talking about because we had to stop talking about it. You know, Josh said I'm working on them in cuts. So, you know, that's going to come with a lot of precision and a lot of dartboard playing in order to get it in that tight window. So I don't expect no drop-off from Josh Allen. I expect just like everybody else expects him. I expect Josh Allen to be the MVP of this league. I expect Josh Allen to lead this team to a Super Bowl, win, lose, or draw. They get there. All right? I expect Josh Allen to throw over 5,000 yards. And guess what? Everybody else's numbers stay the same too because there's no drop-off offensively. You got Dawson Knox, who's year 3, and you got Emmanuel Sanders, who's a slight better pick than John Brown. Beasley, Diggs, another year. The whole line back another year. Where's some excuse out of the clear blue sky that a let-off is going to happen for Josh Allen this year? Are you kidding me? Why is we having this discussion about Josh Allen? We need to be having that discussion about every other quarterback in the league besides him, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Justin Herbert. You know, everybody else is on notice. So I don't know why we worried Pat Mahomes. He's the second highest paid quarterback in the NFL right now. Why is we talking about a bust right now? Come on.
Yeah, maybe, no, I mean, it's a good point, Mook, because there's a floor now, right? Isn't there a floor that Josh Allen could conceivably maybe reach, but it's not low? I mean, that floor is you have one of those guys that are going to lead you. It's like when you have Andrew Luck, or it's like one of those things where it's like, yeah, I mean, at worst, where they, 10-7 or 11, whatever, 11-8. Like at worst, like what is the floor for Josh Allen? And I think that's where the Bills are right now, that the floor is extremely high. I mean, even if he had a down year, I mean, the Bills are very competitive. And quite frankly, they're probably still winning the division with a down year for Josh Allen. So I think they're now in conversations to have one of the top 4 guys, one of those guys that you consistently know is going to be like, Josh Allen again. He's going to take the Bills to the playoffs. Whether, how far they go in the playoffs is another discussion we can have. But he's going to always be one of those quarterbacks that, quite frankly, could play terribly, even like we've seen from Aaron Rodgers in years past, and still take his team to the playoffs just be how good he is. So I think you have one of those regimes here from Josh Allen. And yeah, Mook made a good point of like, why are we talking about a bust at this point? He's kind of proven that his team wins when he plays. Like, look at Wyoming, who wasn't very good. Now they're all in the Bills, actually. Like, pretty much his whole team is rostered by the Bills at this stage. But if you look at it, like, the team sucked when he doesn't play there. And I know, my guy Bruce Nolan hates quarterback wins, but I like him. I mean, I quite frankly think you look at a sport, and if a player plays and the team wins, I don't know. I think there's a little bit to that. Just like whether it's soccer or baseball. If that player plays and the team wins games, Aaron Judges of the world, I don't know. Maybe he matters. So I think at this point, like, can you quantify QB wins? No. but I can say that the team is absolutely better and wins football games when Josh Allen plays, whether it's college or whether it's the pros. The team was way better when Josh Allen was on the field. Look at him. Look at the games that he didn't play in his career. The team sucked. Like, there were some bad rosters there. Yeah. Now the team is competitive every single game he plays, whether it's against Pat Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, or Tom Brady. The team is, at worst, a 2-point underdog on the road.
And you mentioned Wyoming, so that's a perfect segue into Robyn here. Robyn, you've seen him grow from the beginning until now. Sorry, Greg, I think you're muted and I cut you off, but we'll get to you soon. Take the floor on Josh Allen here. Just expectations going into 21. And why is there still that narrative? Why isn't he being treated maybe in the media like those other elite quarterbacks?
That's the question that I've been asking myself a million times. I want to back up a little bit to something Muki was talking about, lies and Nick Wright kind of go hand in hand. When he was talking about he didn't do anything, Josh didn't do anything when he was in high school. Yes, he did. When he went to college, yes, he did. And he can say what he wants and throw out whatever statistics he wants to throw out. But what Kevin was saying is really true. All he does is win. He knows how to win. I don't know how to put this in words. It's very hard to describe something intangible, but you could see it in Josh. The first time that I saw him play at the University of Wyoming, I didn't go to the games, but I watched the sidelines and I listened to every interview he had when he was in college. And you could tell that this kid was different. He was different. And so I think the reason why we have this narrative is because how many people were all over Josh Rosen in that draft? That how many people in Buffalo wanted Josh Rosen to be the quarterback? How many people booed in the field house when Josh was selected? I just freaked out. It was like, am I really hearing Bills fans booing? That just blew me away. And they had to dub it out. If you listen to it now when they have recordings of it, they've taken the boos out of it, but I heard it. And I will never forget it, to be honest with you. I think it was one of the lowest points I can remember as a Bills fan. The kid is a good kid, and he doesn't deserve the crap that he gets from the media. And I think it's all about ego because, everybody said Josh Rosen was supposed to be, the chosen one, whatever. Look at where Sam Darnold is at. He's on his second team. He was drafted higher. Look at where Trubisky's at. It's crazy, but I think the media got a case of embarrassment for one thing, and that's the bottom line. I'm a believer in using statistics as guidelines, but you also have to use your eyes. You also have to have some common sense and be objective, when you're evaluating someone. What kind of what is it about Josh Allen that triggers people to be so nasty? I don't even understand it.
Their evaluations. Yeah, that's what it was.
Exactly. People hate to admit they were wrong is one thing. I remember where I was when he was drafted. I was at UB. I was a junior, and I was doing a management information systems project. And I hated that class. I hated my TA. I hated the professor. My girlfriend is the reason I passed that class. I'm happy admitting that now. And I heard Josh, and then it was like the scene in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie when they say it starts with an S, and then it ends up being Squidward, and then they say Allen, and I threw my headphones at the wall because I was listening to it, not watching it, and I was really upset. Very happy I was wrong. Very happy. And you know what? You said that they had to edit out those boos. Josh Allen heard them too. He knew he had a fan base to prove wrong, that he wasn't exactly welcome into right off the bat. So no doubt in my mind. No doubt in my mind that, we're going to continue to see the same old Josh Allen that we've seen over the last 16, 17, 18, however many games he played last year. But there are question marks about some guys who we're going to see. And we were talking about before this started, whether or not we were going to touch on it. And it really just, if we're going to be podcasters, reporters talking about Bills, there's a responsibility to talk about all the things going on with Cole Beasley, Isaiah McKenzie getting fined today. If you want to share your thoughts on this, definitely comment. We want your guys' opinion on this too. And, you know, vaccine aside, we won't give our personal views on the vaccine, but, you know, how ignorant do you kind of have to be to not abide by the policies that the NFL put in place on a day when you know league personnel are going to be in your building, making sure that you're doing it. Like, that's the day that Isaiah McKenzie got caught not once, but twice without a mask. And that shows to me that maybe he's trying to make a statement. That could be part of it, but I'm not sure that's the time and the place. And I do agree with the sentiment that vaccinated players should be tested at the same rate as unvaccinated. That's the state of the world, really. We see the Delta variant, we see everything. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to rant about that. What I will say is that I think the one good point that I see they have right now, as far as, you know, the NFLPA bargaining for a little more, is making sure that vaccinated players are at least tested the same as unvaccinated. Whoever wants to take the floor on this, feel free to right now. You know, you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, just because it obviously is a difficult subject. But, you know, even Mcdermott just seems distraught by this right now and defeated. So, you know, whoever, we were talking a little bit before, whoever wants it, go for it.
Well, they're a little distraught because they don't know how to handle it. Nobody does. Nobody knows how to handle it.
Yeah.
I mean, how would you feel as a coach? I have vaccinated players. I have unvaccinated players. I have unvaccinated players, you know, not wearing a mask, and I have vaccinated players getting COVID. So it's like, I mean, as a coach, you cannot even begin to even figure what's going on in Coach McDermott's mind. I mean, he's doing an excellent job just being sane with all it. Rules is rules, so he got to stand by the rules in order, you know, that's what his job description says, you know.
100%.
Right?
That's exactly where he shared his.
Whatever his opinion is, he still has to abide by the rules. So, you know, it's chain of command and it rolls that way. But, yeah, it's only out for vaccinated players. They get those fines for, you know, not being vaccinated. And the reason why he was fined, because when the trainer that was vaccinated caught COVID, you got to go to the cameras and see who was near him. So yeah, you might caught McKenzie that had his mask, half mask, while they talking, having a conversation, and you know, it's just half mask. He had his mask on, he was lifting, but they just having a general conversation. His mask is here. It's a violation now because someone during that conversation has contracted. So that's where that came from. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like it happened today and then, you know, he got a fine the next day. You know, they had to go back to the cameras to identify who was around the trainer, you know, who contracted it. So that's how that happened. So once the league looks at all that, this is ran by the league. It's not ran by the bill. You know, the league, you know, manicures that. You don't think that the coaches and everything, the strip people was around seeing McKenzie with his mask, half mask wasn't on? You know what I mean? So it boiled down to what they saw on the cameras. And I'm quite sure McKenzie is not disrespecting protocol in that fashion. All right. To be, and especially being and being, you know, not vaccinated. You know what I mean? Because those are the fines. They're not fining players that's vaccinated. They're only the ones who's not completely masked up when they're around places where they need to be masked up at. So it's a no tolerance rule with the NFL. They do not care if you had it down for 5 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever. If you're on camera with it down and you're unvaccinated, that's just how the NFL works. That's how the shield works.
Right. You know, one thing, in a past life, I used to be a nurse, and so I have probably some solid views on, some people would say I'm rather militant, pro-vax, whatever. My thing is right now, people don't understand that in this pandemic, we don't have all the answers, and we have to do things based on research, on evidence-based research. And that only happens as you have a chance to evaluate as you go. And so the CDC looks like a bunch of clowns because every 5 minutes they're changing the protocols and people say, see, they don't know what they're doing. Well, no, we don't know what we're doing because that's what we're doing is trying to find out. And so when protocols change, it's because information has come along to lead us to believe that we have to change the protocol. So I expect, like you were mentioning earlier, that we're going to see some changes by the NFL again. Mm-hmm. And we have to be able to roll with the punches. You know, we have to be more flexible and understanding that we're all in this together, and it's all a crapshoot. And everything that we're doing right now is research based, and we have to go on the fly at this point. And so when we came out, and I knew this all the way along, because coronaviruses are from the same family of viruses as the common cold. And the reason why we never had a vaccine against the common cold is because it mutates so much. So we can expect that there are going to be changes as we go. When the first booster came out, or the first shot came out, I told people, we're going to end up having boosters. We're going to end up treating this like flu shots. This is the new reality that we're going to be in. Mm-hmm. And I think, and I get it, people are frustrated and they're bored and they're sick of being, at home. And I get all of that. But what we have to do is, I think, all take a deep breath and start being a little bit more patient, with each other, because it's frustrating. We're all frustrated. We all want to go on. We all want to live our lives, and we can't do it right now. And no matter what side of the fence you're on with this, I think we all need to take a step back and just try to be a little more patient with one another.
Yeah, and I think you got to help your community. Like, that's the number one thing you can have to
yes.
do, regardless of what side of the fence you're on. Think about other people. Like, I mean, I think that's the number one thing you can do in life. And it's like, we shouldn't have this era of going to somebody's house and saying, I'm sick, don't come near me. Well, you shouldn't be there. Like, you should be at home, and you should be like, I know it's FOMO. I know there's things going on in life, but you need to think of other people. So if you have your own personal beliefs, well, at the very least, you should be masked up, and you should be following, and you should be very, very safe. And you should be thinking about your team and potentially your employer, which in this case is winning football games. You put your team in a bad position to where you not have a receiver room. And essentially you're running in, sims, or you're running in players that weren't here. So, I mean, those are the kind of things that you're putting your team in position to your employer in position to have struggles with. Think about other people. That's all you can do in this. I fought COVID for a year. I was a contact tracing supervisor for a while. I decided that was my calling to do. I watched the worst of the worst attitudes and mentalities. I fought COVID in many different ways from my computer. But it was a really eye-opening experience to watch what was going on in our community in Rochester and Buffalo, not across the country, and just how much misinformation there really is, whether Mcdermott or Beane says there is or isn't. Tons of misinformation, tons of people actually thinking that there's going to be some terrible effects from the vaccine. And it's just really unfortunate. I think that misinformation was a huge part of the situation. And you would like to see players, like leaders in the locker room, like Cole Beasley, like Isaiah McKenzie, be able to understand the other side of the coin. Like, I understand what Beasley's saying with, they're making us do something that's not right, this and that. I think there's some credence to that. And he says he's speaking up for the players that don't have a voice, who might not get tryouts, who might get cut based on this when the 53s come and they're like Andre Smith or whoever. Quentin Morris gets to that 85%. Yeah. Look, think about it. Like, we need to get to that 85, 90, that gets a really sticky line really quickly. So I understand what Cole's saying with that on a personal level, but you just got to think of your team. And if you've made the conscious decision to not get vaccinated for whatever your reason is, be safe and think about your room, think about your employer, and think about your family. How can you do that? Wear a mask and be safe and follow social distancing, and maybe miss a few events. Like, it sucks, but maybe you can't go out and you can't, can't go to the restaurant that night. I don't know. Maybe you got to pick and choose what you can do until you're comfortable with potentially getting a vaccine someday.
What if that player was born as a diabetic?
Yourself, buddy.
Then what? What if that player was born a diabetic?
Sure.
I mean,
there's certainly different folks. There aren't a ton of active type 1 diabetics in the NFL. There are a handful. The overall point that all of us go through.
We got accurate numbers on that. You stand by those numbers that you're saying. Do you know that? Do you know that?
No, there's a lot of people who can't get the vaccine.
Right, but
there's lots of people. There's a lot of people who can't get the vaccine. So all the different people that go through, all of us have jobs. Most of us have jobs. Not all of us. All of us have employers. Does everyone agree with every policy that your employer has? Never. Does everyone agree? You obviously comply with it to some standpoint. You know, there are things that, whether it's drug testing, whether it's ability to participate in certain holidays, whether it's certain ways that you dress, certain ways that you act, expectations in different areas. I don't know that everyone agrees with every single policy that their employer mandates of them or requires of them as part of your contract with it. Many people have the benefit of having representation by a union who can speak on their behalf to be able to fight for their rights or abilities to negotiate. Both those things have happened here, that there is a employment contract agreement between an employer and an employee. There is union representation to negotiate those rights and expectations. Both those things have happened in the NFL. I certainly think that the percentages show why some of the group that does not feel they're being represented probably got outvoted in the NFLPA. So I understand feeling a sense of maybe some helplessness, because if the percentages are showing, I think, somewhere in the 85 to 90% range for the league, that still represents 10 to 15% of the NFL. 10 to 15% of the NFL, you're still talking about 400 players across the NFL that did not choose to do so, and then but are in an NFLPA that has agreed to many of these things on their behalf as part of their, employment contract. So I understand the frustration. I understand the situation that many of them are in. I also understand the pragmatic approach that Sean McDermott has taken to this, in which
before we started, you were talking about it super well. So I wanted you to get to this, Greg. Thank you.
So, he's, I think, walked that line really, really well. I have a great deal of respect for the way that he's approached it in sharing, not hiding from his personal feelings on it, what he prefers, what he thinks is best for his team, what he thinks is best for his country, without saying everyone must do this, without talking down to the people that have chosen not to, without making them feel inferior or less intelligent or that they're making some huge mistake. Exactly. But still sharing that I think they should. I think we've shared information that explains why they should, and I think it's the right thing to do for our team and for our country. I think that's as good as he can do. I think that's as much as you can ask of a leader, is to provide all the information, share exactly what you want, explicitly explain why, share all the information that's there, and then hope that that message resonates with your people. And I think that's what he's done, and I hope that puts the team into a position where they can move forward. I do hope that some of the changes we've heard recently, there was a proposal sent back to the NFLPA in the past hour that states moving testing from 14 days back to 7 days. I know the NFLPA's request is daily, and that both vaccinated and unvaccinated players are both tested daily, which many of the things we saw, like the trainer with the Bills, was a vaccinated employee. Knowing about that earlier certainly sounds like it has some benefits. I'm curious to see if some of the the Bills weren't even the worst outbreak. They had 9 players test positive in Tennessee. So there are quite a bit of concern that I'm sure is being discussed at the highest levels of the NFL right now, and that they have 17 days until the Bills kick off for real. There's going to be some serious discussion of the best way to go about this and how they could protect this season.
And that's why we have to be a little more patient with things that change, this is changing, from one week to the next. The other thing that I just want to say also, I don't know about you guys, but I could not look at Sean McDermott and not have a tremendous amount of empathy for his frustration, because you could just feel it coming through. And it's not even so much the disagreement in itself that he has. I think it really hurts him. I think it really hurts him to have that divisiveness going on right now. And you can almost feel his emotional pain as he talks about it, because he's frustrated. I mean, like he said, there's millions of dollars on the line, and everybody's lives are at stake here. This isn't a joke. Yeah.
Yeah, Ryan, I know we don't want to spend too much more time on this, obviously, because I know we, as well as all of Bills Mafia, are frankly just sick of hearing about it. But I do want to let you get your thoughts in on the whole situation. So just take it.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the fan base thinks that the media enjoys writing about this. I think we're all fed up with it too. We're bored of it. I'm sick of having that in the headlines of an article or covering it or writing about it. But the fact of the matter is, a player was fined today. He went on social media, posted the letter, started talking all about it, and then the league, some of the league insiders come back and say, listen, if this happens again, not only are they subjected to fines, but they could be suspended for 4 games or this, that, or the other. And if that happens, then it's not just about the vaccine anymore. It's about this Super Bowl window that the Bills have and you taking yourself out of that equation. So it's such a complex issue, but we're sick of talking about it. But when things happen like this on social media and they get posted and they get discussed and they get talked about, it's our job. It has to get done. So at the end of the day, it's not ideal, but this has been a topic, and it's one of the most important topics going on in the NFL right now, and not just in Buffalo.
Right. I don't talk about it at all because it's not football to me, but it's real. It's real. It's real, and it's affecting every household. It's affecting everybody. And, there's still, it's just a tough situation. It's tough. I commend those guys for, first of all, everybody is grown men. It's not like, Coach Mcdermott has, a bunch of high schoolers, they have families as well. So it's like, man, it's just, I just feel for Coach. It's his mindset on, how is he doing, with all this? He has a family as well.
Exactly.
Years down the road, that will be an interesting feature in ESPN, or that's an article Ty Dunn, I think, would write, is talking to Sean McDermott years down the road, looking back on this. That's definitely something interesting, but more interesting moving forward, more immediate, good things. We got a Bills game this weekend.
Woo,
home game.
Finally football.
With fans. Woo, oh my God, I love preseason football more than anything, especially this year. But obviously, Bills Packers.
I think I've heard very many people say that.
Yeah, right? No, I've never – this is the first year in forever I've heard people be like, I'm excited to go to a game. And, it could be a sellout crowd. We were talking about it last week on the Folding Round Table when Bell was here. He's excited as well as anybody else to get out there and be those Mafia. But, of course, there are things we're looking forward to other than the crowd. We got to look at the matchups, all the, the battles going on in camp right now. And, Ryan, we haven't really talked – actually, the one time that – you came on the cap over this offseason, I was out because I can't remember why exactly, but I didn't get to hear your thoughts about anything this offseason really directly face-to-face or screen-to-screen. So, what are you looking forward to the most this weekend for Bills Packers? A specific position group battle maybe, or anything?
I'm not even going to say a specific position group battle. I'm going to say 2 positions that I'm keeping an eye on, though, are offensive tackle and cornerback because of some of the injuries that are taking place and some of the depth in general. You're seeing a lot of trades around the league right now where draft picks are being traded for players are being traded for players, and I think those are 2 areas where the Bills might have to look and see what's out there. I know that the Patriots added a cornerback today, Sean Wade, just in this year's draft. He is more of an inside cornerback. I think, if anything, the Bills need to look for a boundary cornerback based on the depth that's there. So this is still a big game for some of those younger players on this roster to show that they can step up because you had Dane Jackson getting an MRI. You have Levi Wallace with a hip injury. It's concerning. It's a big issue right now. And then on offensive tackle, there's some issues there as well. In terms of, is Spencer Brown going to be ready to go week 1? Because that's your swing tackle. You obviously don't have much faith in Bobby Hart. There's no reason to have faith in Bobby Hart based on what we've seen. And then with Tommy Doyle, Doyle, at least he's a rookie. He's a young kid. He wasn't going up against the best of the best in college by any stretch of the imagination. He needs some development. So what are you going to do there? Do you swing a trade for a veteran tackle that you think can just come in and be a swing option early on in the season until you say, okay, I feel like Spencer Brown's completely healthy, and it never hurts to have depth at those positions either.
Yeah, Greg, I know you as much as anybody love talking about the big guys in the trenches. The orb.
Oh, I love large
overall
humans so
ratio
much.
of belly.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So obviously we don't have any issues at defensive line. We have an embarrassment of riches at defensive line. That's not the current issue here. I wouldn't mind maybe a little more belly in one guy. I would take one large belly at defensive tackle maybe. We'll work on that next year. From an offensive line standpoint, it's an interesting spot. I love the way Ryan talked about it, and there's not a ton out there. You know, people hoard their offensive linemen this time of year. It's the reason Brandon Beane got people to pay up for Russell Bodine and people like that. It's a tough time of year. If you poke around, there's a couple rosters out there that obviously have a different strategic mindset right now than what the Bills do or the Chiefs do or the Ravens do. I'm talking about teams like the Lions, teams like the Jaguars that just brought in completely new regimes, new coaches, new front offices. They inherited some players. So the Lions are the one that intrigues me because they just invested a top 7 pick in Penei Sewell, but they also had a handful of guys like Terrell Crosby. He's a guy who, you know, he's going to be coming up on the end of his contract here. He was a starter for them last year. They paid big money to Taylor Decker. They paid big money to Frank Ragnow. They're paying Sewell on the other end of it. He's probably not going to be a huge part of their future. That's the kind of guy I would target. Now, he's good enough. There's no reason to cut him. They don't need to get rid of him in any sense. He's coming up on the last year of his rookie deal. You might need to give them a little something, but when we're talking about, we don't know if we can afford to keep all these defensive linemen or all these receivers. Maybe all of a sudden it's a late round pick and a guy that we were going to cut. And, you know, I don't know, maybe Dan Campbell loves Vernon Butler and he'd love to have Vernon Butler. I don't know how these things work. But that kind of scenario, those are the kind of teams I would look at and the kind of situations where you have a young roster with new leadership and people that are looking to get some turnover and that they have some veterans that aren't in their long-term plans. Those are the kind of guys I would try to go after. And I don't think we have a lot of those spots, but if we found a corner with some flexibility to play nickel or some flexible swing tackle coverage, those are the two spots I wouldn't hate having a little bit more experience in one of those spots.
I have a question for the rest of the panel here because I value your opinion so much. What are your thoughts about Cody Ford? Where is he at?
Ryan, you've got Ryan Muki. You guys have seen him more than I have in the on-site practices that I got to see 2 so far. It'll be a 3rd one next week. And the games, I've been really impressed this year. Has that been reinforced in the reps you guys have got to see?
Yeah, I think he's looked good. I think he's looked healthy, and I think that's the big thing is even when he was in here as a rookie, he wasn't at 100% early on in his career. Last year, he was healthy for a few games, but then he got injured again. I think he is completely healthy now. I think he's in a good headspace. I think he's ready to roll with this first team unit. I think he's going to get the starting job, and he's going to really help, especially in terms of run blocking.
Good to know.
Yeah, no, he's definitely in the preseason action. He looked a lot better at guard. He looked really, really good in the first 2 games at guard, to be completely honest. And it's a shame.
It's funny because no one thought he was a tackle, and they were right.
He should have been a guard right from the beginning.
That's the funniest part about Cody Ford. Like it wasn't like one of those things. Well, hey, we'll see. Almost people were pretty convinced across the analytics world, across his measurables, that he would be a guard. And it was funny that I thought the Bills went a little bit out of their way to try to not make him a guard.
Right.
But I'm happy to see him play the position and have some versatility in a pinch. And I think it did take 3 different offensive line spots to find it, but good for them for keeping with him. I wouldn't have. I was down on Cody Ford. I personally thought he was one of this regime personally's worst draft picks. So I'm happy to see him come forth and really then develop player development, because quite frankly, I may have given up on him as someone just watching and observing, but I'm very interested to see what they were able to do with him. And line 1A or line 1, if you want to call it, is not that bad. It's a good offensive line. It's not great. It's a good offensive line. And I think that's what people forget is they see the offensive line in preseason. Like, how do you even evaluate Webb or Fromm? Because at points, it's awful. Like the depth's a little concerning. But I thought they had a little bit more depth than they do. But line 1 is good. Like, I think it's a good, especially with the underrated Mitch Morse. I mean, I just think that the line is good and will continue to keep Josh upright, especially throwing the ball. So I mean, I think there's a lot to look forward to, and I think Cody Ford kind of just fits in there, and I think it's a really interesting unit. But Greg said it best. I think Ryan got to it. Like, I think there could be a trade there. I think that's one of the positions you take from your riches and DNs, and you trade for. Those are the people love DNs. I mean, you could get some value for something, and I think that's very likely a target. Could be a swing tackle, fourth tackle, third offensive guard. You know, Lamp didn't work out, but I think there's a lot of moving parts there. And I think the Bills, especially with all these COVID problems that could happen, the Bills need to find a way to roster Jake Fromm. I'm sorry. Like, I don't love it personally, but I think that they need to do it. And Webb's had some rough days. Maybe Ryan or Muki could comment on that. But from what I've heard, he's looked horrible lately. So I think he goes to the practice squad still, and you still might have to roster a third quarterback. It just, the Bills love their draft picks. And that's kind of my point as this comes down. A lot of Bills draft picks have made this roster, and I think that they want to see more from. And I think that Trubisky can go on to greener pastures and prove himself and potentially have a job. What do you do for a long-term backup still? So I think that there's still that potential that you see Jake Fromm on the roster come cutdown day, especially with some injuries and all these COVID problems coming around the league. I think Jake Fromm becomes a little bit more valuable than he did 3 weeks ago.
Good point.
I've been banging the trade Jake Fromm thing for a while. What?
To trade Jake Fromm might go back to quarantine quarterback. He might send him back to be the quarantine quarterback. Remember, you have to stay away from the whole team. Right?
Possible. You have to inactivate players anyways. You might as well have a quarantine quarterback when you have a certain amount of inactives on game day. I don't think it's crazy to say, especially as some roster injuries starting to come down the fold. Jake Fromm's a guy that do not always leave him off your roster position. I still think there's a place for him on this roster. So it's going to be interesting come cutdown day. If they find that third quarterback, especially as they start to get a little scared at what could happen inside certain position groups.
Absolutely.
Yeah, position groups like cornerback. We're really, really down at cornerback right now. I mean, Muki, we only got a few more minutes left. I know we only got some of us until about 9 p.m., so we'll make this quick. But, position groups you're looking at, worried about, just things that people should be wary of or knowledgeable of heading into this game against Green Bay.
Well, I'm finally good to see. Like, this game is going to be like a regular season game because I'm quite sure Aaron Rodgers is going to be on the other side playing MVP versus the so-called, the MVP to be in Josh Allen. A little preseason narrative, but I want to see if David Bakhtiari is going to play, and I want to see him match up against Greg Rousseau. Now, Greg Rousseau is Greg Rousseau. Do the same thing he's been doing to everybody else, and he do that to the best left tackle in the NFL. Woo-wee. Bills definitely got to steal that dirty. But cornerback is obviously the eyesore. It's just a bad drop-off, and I understand the Bills is trying to, get more with less, but, you're going to have to pay a little bit, to get a solid outside corner. We have Teron Johnson, who's in the contract year, by the way, who's evolving right now. All right. So that year 3 is always that big deal. Look at it with Dawson Knox year 3. Look at it how it affects Teron Johnson year 3. And that cornerback, it's a drop off after that. So yeah, they got to address that. Hopefully they wait for somebody, a bigger name to get cut off a team as a cap casualty. And, we'll bring him in at a bargain price to come win a Super Bowl. So that's the only problem I might have is just the secondary.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely. I mean, you'd be ignorant to say you're not nervous about the secondary, but it does look like a backup safety spot between whether it's Jaquan Johnson, Damar Hamlin, maybe both making the roster potentially. It looks like that is in hands because both have looked really good, and I was really drafted Damar Hamlin last year. Hope that maybe if Dane Jackson does stick around, he and Hamlin could rekindle a little bit of what they had at Pitt together because they secondary back there together. They were the leaders in the group, and they could bring that to Buffalo too. But I said we'd be out here before the 9 o'clock mark, so I'm gonna stay true to my word. I will do that. So thank you everyone for tuning in. I want to thank, of course, co-host for being here. Robyn from Buffalo FAMBase, Hawkins from 96.5 Power FM and 1080 AM. Ryan Talbot, upstatesyracuse.com, Matt Perino's better half, of course. And then Greg Tompsett, Cover One, likable guy, cap genius. It's been a pleasure, guys.
He is a genius.
Is a genius.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, let's just hype him up more than he needs.
I'm good at making up numbers.
Well, all numbers, math isn't real. If you get anything out of this podcast, but you know what? Thank you. We will back same time, same place. Of course, with the different.
I know, right?
Trainwreck Sports and Buffalo FAMBase.